ballroom inside the luxury penthouse had fallen silent, but outside on the marble balcony, faint music drifted in. Music that didn't come from any speaker. Instead, it came from the quiet tapping of bare feet against stone. Billionaire Richard Alden, a man whose face was often in newspapers for his ruthless business moves, pushed aside the curtain with a frown. He was used to everything being in order, everything polished, everything perfect. But what he saw made him freeze. A boy, ragged clothes, dirt on his face, no shoes, was dancing in the cold night air. His movements were graceful, almost like poetry written without words. Every turn, every spin carried not just rhythm, but emotion. For a moment, Richard almost forgot the weight of his wealth, the silence of his mansion, and the heaviness that had plagued his home since tragedy struck. Behind him, in a wheelchair near the window, his daughter Lily was watching. Lily had once been a vibrant little girl who loved to run across fields, chasing butterflies until the sun disappeared. But a cruel accident months ago had left her paralyzed. Since then, laughter had vanished from the Alden household. Doctors said she might never walk again, and the spark in her eyes had dimmed. But now, Richard saw something he hadn't seen in months. Lily was smiling. Her small hands clutched the wheels of her chair as if she wanted to move closer, her eyes glued to the boy outside. Richard opened the balcony door, his deep voice breaking through the night air. "What are you doing here?" The boy stopped mid-step, startled, his chest heaving from the dance.
I'm sorry, sir.
"I didn't mean to trespass. I was just dancing. Sometimes it keeps me warm." Richard narrowed his eyes. "What's your name?" "Ethan," the boy said quietly. He looked about 12, maybe 13, though life on the streets had carved lines of hardship into his young face. "I didn't mean any harm." Before Richard could say more, Lily's voice piped up, soft but clear. "Daddy let him dance again." Richard turned. He couldn't deny his daughter anything, not when her voice carried the first note of joy he'd heard in months. He gave a reluctant nod. Ethan hesitated, but when Lily whispered, "Please," he began again. This time, Richard didn't just see a homeless boy moving to silent music. He saw the way Ethan's feet painted invisible pictures, the way his arms told stories of longing, hope, and survival. Every step was raw honesty, born not from training but from struggle. Lily clapped softly, her eyes wide. "It's beautiful," she whispered. For the first time since her accident, her face lit up with real happiness. Richard felt his throat tighten. He had billions, yet all the money in the world hadn't been able to restore his daughter's joy. And here was a boy with nothing, giving her exactly what she needed most. Over the next few days, Ethan returned. At first, Richard had been wary, but Lily begged for him to come back, and soon Richard allowed it. The boy would dance on the balcony, telling stories with his movements, while Lily watched, sometimes laughing, sometimes crying, but always feeling alive again. Richard began to talk with Ethan, learning his story. His mother had died when he was little, and his father, broken by grief, had disappeared. Ethan had survived on the streets, earning scraps by dancing at train stations, outside restaurants, anywhere people might drop a coin. He never begged for food, he only danced. "Dancing makes me feel like I'm not invisible," he said once, "like I matter." Richard was struck by the boy's strength. Despite everything, he had held on to hope. He carried no bitterness, only resilience. One evening, Lily asked Ethan, "Can you teach me?" Her voice trembled. She hadn't asked to do anything new since her accident. Richard's heart ached as he watched Ethan kneel beside her wheelchair. "You can't stand yet," Ethan said gently. "But dancing is not just about legs, it's about the heart." You can dance with your hands, your head, your smile. And so, lessons began. Ethan would show her movements with his arms, and Lily would copy, swaying to invisible music. Soon the room echoed with laughter again, the kind Richard thought he'd never hear. Doctors noticed changes too. Lily became more active, more determined. She asked to try therapy again. At first, her legs barely moved. But Ethan clapped and cheered every tiny step. Slowly, her will grew stronger. Richard, once skeptical of miracles, began to believe. One afternoon, Richard called Ethan into his study. The boy entered nervously, still wearing his worn shirt and patched trousers. Richard placed an envelope on the desk. "This is for you," he said. Ethan shook his head. "I don't want money, sir." Richard looked him in the eyes. "This isn't charity. It's an opportunity. I've spoken to a performing arts school. They've agreed to take you in on a scholarship. You have a gift, Ethan. Don't waste it on the streets." A tears welled in the boy's eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Richard replied softly. Ethan did. But even as he prepared for a new future, he never stopped visiting Lily. Their bond had grown unshakable. Together they practiced, laughed, and dreamed. Months later, at a school recital, Richard sat in the front row, watching Ethan perform on stage for the first time. His movements were sharper, more polished, yet they still carried the raw heart that had once caught the eye of a lonely girl in a wheelchair. And when the music ended, the applause shook the hall, but nothing compared to what happened afterward. Backstage, Ethan helped Lily to her feet. Step by trembling step, she walked toward her father, tears streaming down her face. "Daddy, I can dance too." Richard fell to his knees, holding her as if he'd never let go again. He looked up at Ethan, gratitude in his eyes. "You gave me back my daughter." The story of a billionaire and a homeless boy spread far beyond that stage. Newspapers wrote about it, people shared it online, and everywhere the story touched hearts. But for Richard, it was not about headlines. It was about the truth he had learned. Money could buy many things, but it could never buy the gift of hope. Hope had come from a boy with nothing except a dance. And so, the mansion that once echoed with silence now rang with music, laughter, and life. A billionaire had found his daughter's smile again, and a homeless boy had found his future. Both had been broken in different ways, but together, they discovered something priceless. Sometimes the smallest acts, the courage to dance, the strength to smile, can spark the greatest miracles. That was the lesson Richard carried with him. Until the end of his days, true wealth is not measured in money, but in the lives we touch and the hope we inspire.